Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm very happy to have you here, guys. Today I want to try out 7 fragrances from Sora Dora. Have you heard of Sora Dora? I'm sure you have if you are passionate about fragrances. If you watch the fragrance reviewer community here on YouTube, I'm most certain you've already heard of the brand. But in case you haven't heard of them, they're a niche brand from France. They were founded in 2021. Up to this date, they have 7 fragrances in their portfolio, and all 7 fragrances were created in collaboration with 3 perfumers. All 3 are women, so kudos to them. I will insert the perfumers here so you can take a look. So yeah, basically they reached out to me and they asked me if I would like to test some of their fragrances, and I was like, of course. Now guys, for full disclosure, all these fragrances were sent to me. However, this video is not sponsored. I am not paid to talk about the brand, and I'm not paid to talk about these fragrances. So yeah, now, and I also think I have a discount code. Yeah, if I have a discount code, I will leave it here on the screen and in the description box in case you're interested. Now, something that I like about this brand, they have samples. They have a discovery kit. So yeah, already bonus point, honestly. I feel like in today's day and age, it's very important to give the consumer a chance to test the fragrance prior, especially if you're a brand that wants to get international, especially if you're a brand that wants to, let's just say, ship internationally. It's always such a nice touch, and I always appreciate when brands offer samples. And all are 2 ml, so they are quite generous with their samples. You know, you have plenty of fragrance to test. So yes, I have these 7 samples, and I also they let me choose a fragrance of my choice, and I have chosen camel wood. So yeah, I want to talk about all these fragrances. Now, I have had these fragrances in my collection for around a month, maybe a bit more, like a month and a bit, few days leading to a month, I'm not really sure. Let's just say a month, so I had plenty of time to test them. I have already tested them on my skin, but today, because there are 7 fragrances and I don't have enough room, you know, I will spread them on paper. So yeah, without further ado, you guys, let's just begin. By the way, if you have tried any fragrances from the brand, let me know what you think of the brand. I would be really curious to hear your thoughts on them. You know what, let's just start with the most popular one, which is none other than Mandorle. Now, Mandorle, okay, so yeah, this is all about cherry, about bitter cherry. Look, if you are familiar with cherry compote, like if your grandma or your mother or one of your aunts used to make cherry compote, to me, the first time I smelled this fragrance, like legit the first time I ever smelled this fragrance, to me smelled like you freshly open a jar of homemade cherry compote. Cherry mixed with some bitter cherry there, or sour cherry, you know? And it's almost like when you spray this fragrance and you smell it, it's almost like you get the first whiff of when you just have opened the bottle or like the jar of cherry compote, you know? So yeah, this scent, to me, I have to say, it's quite nostalgic, you know? I have a lot of memories, you know, from when I was a kid and I used to eat like lots of cherry compote. Yeah. Yes, it smells exactly like that. But in the opening, it smells like you have just opened a jar of homemade cherry compote, cherry mixed with those like bitter cherries, you know, or sour cherries, however they are called. And it's a very concentrated compote. You just open the jar and you go into, like, basically you lean in to smell it and you get the first whiff of that. Yes, this is how it smells in the opening. But very warm, like very warm. It's almost like you let that jar sit in the sun a little bit, you know, so it has this like warmth radiance to it. And it's also slightly boozy, but not boozy in the sense of alcoholic, boozy in the sense that it's, how to say, like you almost had like a cherry that went bad there, but it's the slightest hint of that, you know, nothing too much. It's quite balanced. This is pretty much how it smells like to me in the opening. Now, something to keep in mind, I will insert the notes here on the screen so you can take a look, but this has listed benzoin. Now, I feel like if you are familiar with amber accords, or if you are familiar with resins in fragrances, sometimes, I mean, they're not only used for the scent, like the specific scent profile of that particular note or accord. Sometimes they're actually used to give a lot of richness, of warmth, and of a lot of roundness to the fragrance. And I feel like the benzoin here, especially in the opening, it is this exact thing that it does. Basically, you know that the smell of cherries, how to say, it's quite like breezy in a sense, you know. It's not very like concentrated in a way, but I feel like mixed with that benzoin accord, basically what the benzoin does here, it just makes the smell of cherry compote very rich, very dense, very concentrated, very thick, basically, you know, like thick. So it makes it very strong and quite dense. As this fragrance develops on the skin, I feel like out of nowhere you start to get this like shy, slight suede-like facet in the background, but it's nothing too much, it's quite balanced, I feel like. Honestly, to me, now keep in mind I do like leather in my fragrances, I love suede in my fragrances, so I'm already familiar with how it smells, but to me this is balanced. I feel like even if you're not a lover of suede, not leather, because it doesn't smell like leather, suede basically is softer, slightly drier, a bit more fuzzier even, you know, to me the suede here adds a slight dryness to the fragrance, and again it adds a slight complexity. I feel like few minutes in, besides that cherry facet, that like cherry compote smell that's very like sweet and concentrated, you start to have this like shy, dry suede like feel in the background, and you also get with that cherry right behind it, I feel like you get this like sweet almondy nutty facet. Now as this fragrance will develop more and more, let's just say 30 minutes in, to me you lose the cherry, like it goes more and more in the background until you lose it completely, and to me it's replaced with that like almondy nutty sweet facet that honestly sometimes when I smell it, like I even mistake it for cherries, you know. But yeah, you lose the cherry, the almondy nutty facets move forward, let's say. You still have the warmth of the fragrance, you still have the richness of the fragrance, you still have the density and the overall like that like robust feel and the sweetness as well, but it's just you don't have that like bitter cherry facet, you know. Even though it's very interesting, and sometimes like my nose plays tricks with me, you know, like sometimes my nose mistakes that almondy nutty facet with cherry, so you know it's like it comes and goes in a sense, and you have all this with that soft suede like feel in the background that gets a tad more pronounced now, but nothing crazy, you guys. It's not a fragrance that's challenging, it's not a fragrance, it's the kind of fragrance honestly that you don't have to think twice about reaching for. It's the kind of fragrance that honestly, if you love the smell of cherries and if you love a rich, full, robust composition in a sense, because the texture of this fragrance, is quite rich, you know. It's not a faint fragrance, it's not like a breezy fragrance in a sense, because usually I have noticed that in cherries sometimes you have the smell of cherries, but you don't have any, how to say, like other notes to pull it to the, not to the ground, but basically to make it richer, to make it a bit more robust. Here you have them. Now, this fragrance reminded me a little bit of Halt at Night by Attar Collection. However, if I were to compare these fragrances, to me, imagine Halt at Night would be the daytime version, and this one from Sora Dora, Mandorle, would be the nighttime version of that fragrance, if you know what I mean. So yeah. This is pretty much what I think about the fragrance. I do like it, honestly. I like it a lot. It smells very beautiful. I am curious to play with some layering combos, and maybe I will update you about this one in a future video. But I feel like this fragrance, because it's quite, how to say, it's strong, it's present, it's dense, but it's not very complicated. You don't have a lot of different contrasting facets, you know, that pull the fragrance in all these directions. To me, this is quite a simplistic fragrance. Yes, it's sweet, yes, it's dense, yes, it's rich, round, robust. You have the cherry, you have the almond, and you have the warmth, and that like dry facet in the background. So because it's quite simplistic, I feel like you could layer it with basically with anything else, you know, like legit with anything else. It would add this like sweet warmth and cherry to any fragrance. So yeah, I am really curious. A layering combo that I had in mind was with La Belle Le Parfum by Jean Paul Gaultier. Really curious how this would play out. Now yeah, enough about Mandorle, because we have a lot of other fragrances to go to. I do really like this fragrance, honestly. Now, something to point out, if you are interested in this, any one of these fragrances, take advantage of the fact that they sell discovery kits. Please test them for yourself. Don't blind buy them, guys. Like, especially when you have the possibility to test a fragrance prior, don't blind buy it. My advice, of course, like you do whatever you want with your money, but my advice is to test them prior. Okay, so let's move on to hold on, let me actually look for it. Okay, I found it. You guys, I found a fragrance for men that I have fallen so head over heels in love with this fragrance. Oh my god, it's a gorgeous fragrance, and every time I smell it, you guys, this smells so beautiful and so masculine. Now, this next fragrance is called Vanuatu, and this is marketed towards men as always. Here are the notes for the fragrance. Now, something to keep in mind, by the way, when it comes to Sora Dora, and something I think the brand should also pay attention, I will just show it to you now. Basically, if you buy these samples, keep in mind when you take this cap off, try to do it in a very gently way, because if you pull too hard, you will take the whole, basically this whole part here, this whole black part here, you will just take it off. Something like this happened with this fragrance with Gladiator, and now, like, yeah, hold on, I don't think, yeah, basically you see now when I try to pull it, it comes out with the whole spray and everything. So yeah, this is, but basically it's something I think I did because the fragrance, when I first tried it, it was okay, but after that I think I pushed the cap too hard. I don't know what I did, whatever. Now let's get back to Vanuatu. Now this fragrance, to me, this is like the embodiment of a true masculine man. Like when you think of a healthy masculine man, like he's strong, he has this presence to him, he has this, like, he exudes this masculinity. To me, this is the fragrance that embodies that energy, honestly. There's just something so statement, so bold, so masculine about this fragrance without trying to be too much, in a sense. This to me smells like money, it smells refined, it smells expensive, it smells luxurious. It's like, when I smell this fragrance, I love it. I love it, love it. Now this one, okay, let me actually spray this one on my skin as well, since I love the scent so much. But keep in mind, this to me is just for men. I wouldn't wear this fragrance. However, when I tried this one on my partner, I loved smelling it on him. So yeah, it smells amazing on men. Look, this opens up. The fragrance, like the composition itself, it's quite deep, it's quite rich, but it has something that's very refined about it. It's not sharp, it's not harsh. This one opens up peppery in a way, with something that's slightly green, with this rich woody facade and a slight powdery woody feel in the background. How to say, it's spicy, but not herbal and spicy, it's like slightly green, fresh and spicy, but not your typical freshness. It's woody, it's quite irisy at the same time, but it smells very seductive in a sense. I don't know how to describe this fragrance. It's a fragrance that you need to have the attitude for. I feel like you need to have the energy for. It's a fragrance that if you are looking to invest in a signature fragrance, honestly, please get a sample of this fragrance and test it. Look, of course, keep in mind, I am very biased when I say that I love this fragrance so much, but it legit, like, I think of all these fragrances, this fragrance is the one that surprised me the most. Like, when I smell this fragrance, and especially when I tried it on my partner, it smelled amazing, like 10 out of 10 in my opinion. It's a fragrance that it's very underrated. It smells very masculine, but it smells masculine without trying too hard. And it's a scent DNA that personally I haven't tried in any other fragrances. It's not the kind of fragrance that you smell on everybody. It's not the kind of fragrance that you can find it anywhere, like in every fragrance store, like in every drugstore, online. It's not that kind of fragrance. To me, this has something very special about it, something that's very, basically it smells very expensive, but how to say, like the luxurious aspect of the fragrance is in its refined elements, in a sense. Everything about this fragrance is refined. Now, keep in mind, this fragrance is not your typical blue freshie, it's not your typical citrusy fragrance or citrusy aromatic fragrance. However, it's not a fragrance that's hard to enjoy. I don't think it's challenging. I think if you're a man who has this very, like, masculine presence to himself, and you want something that's different, look, how to say, it's very hard to describe this fragrance, honestly. It's, first of all, you have a woody accord. This is made around a rich woody accord. It's slightly dark, it has a slight depth to it, but it's not that like foresty woody accord, you know, it's not that like deep green foresty woody accord. However, you do have some greenness here, but the greenness to my nose translates to this like soft, almost like creamy, spicy facet without it being too spicy. This is not a spice bomb. You also do have some like powdery cold nuances in the background, but and you have something, how to say, like slightly minty, slightly mentholated, but again in the background with that woody accord accompanying it. Now, it's a fragrance that I love. How it smells, I think it smells very attractive. I think it smells very masculine. So if you're a man and you were looking to invest in a signature scent, perhaps, again, take advantage of the fact that you can order a sample and get a sample of this. Now, please keep in mind, fragrance is something that's very personal. So just because I am crazy about this fragrance doesn't mean that you will be crazy about it as well. But I do think there is a possibility, especially if you're a man, get a sample of this one and try it if you have the chance. But how to say, give it time. This fragrance to me has class. It's something that's elegant. It's not the kind of fragrance that how to say, again, I don't think you need necessarily the age, but I do think that some people might find it a bit more mature. To me, it has something from an aftershave vibe, from like an old school type of aftershave vibe, but it doesn't smell like a barbershop. It doesn't go into that direction. Okay, so those were my thoughts about this fragrance. Now, let me tell you something. Let me actually mention the performance for this fragrance because it's crazy. Basically, like I've told you in a few other videos of mine, when my partners agrees, I like to test fragrances that are for men. I like to test them on him because, of course, I get to see how a fragrance that's marketed towards men actually smells like on men. Now, when I smell this fragrance on him, honestly, like, I promise you, I'm not being dramatic, but I was blown away. Like, I was blown away, but he enjoyed it a lot as well. And I feel like, basically, I sprayed this fragrance and the next day he had like a family event, like a more formal, elegant family event. And he had to wear basically kind of like a suit. And I asked him if he doesn't want to spray this fragrance. So he sprayed this fragrance. He did around 6 sprays. You guys, his sister told me that she could smell that scent the whole night there. She didn't know from whom it was coming from, but next day when she came to us and I actually showed her these fragrances as well, and she was smelling some of these, and I showed her this fragrance, she was like, oh my god, I kept smelling this fragrance, I kept getting whiffs of this fragrance, and I had no idea from whom it was coming from her brother. So yeah, beautiful fragrance. Now yeah, performance is amazing for this fragrance. This is something that I want to say. Basically, he did like 6 sprays, 7 sprays, I don't know. He came back second day, like guys, like after 24 hours, I could still smell the fragrance in his hair, here, like on his neck. So yeah, I feel like the performance for this fragrance is great. It definitely justifies the price that you pay for it. Okay, so let's move on. You know what, let's move on to Camel Oud because it was right here in front of me. Now, I have the full bottle, but I will try it from the sample here because I have all the samples here close to me. Now, this fragrance, honestly, I think it's the strongest one out of all these fragrances, but it's also the one that I feel like is the most challenging, meaning that it's not something for everyone. Look, I love oud, I love Middle Eastern fragrances, I love spicy fragrances, but speaking of spicy fragrances, I want to make here like, not a disclaimer, I want to say something about spicy fragrances. Basically, just because you see that a fragrance has listed like a spicy accord, don't think that all spicy accords smell similar. They can be very different. You have spices that give a warming up sensation. You have spices that give sweetness. You have spices that have this like green freshness to them. You have spices that make your nose tingle, you know, and then you also have those, how to say, like green, slightly herbal, aromatic like spices in a way, you know. I'm talking about dried herbs as well. Now, I know they are not considered spices, but basically something among the lines of, you know. So just because you see that a fragrance has listed a spicy accord or like spicy something, don't automatically assume that it's sweet. Now, my favorite kind of spices are the sweet spices. I think I've mentioned in every video where I talk about spices, I mentioned that I'm a sucker for cinnamon. I love cinnamon. Like, to me, I have not tried yet the fragrance that can have too much cinnamon in it, you know, like to me this just doesn't exist. I love cinnamon, I love cloves, I love nutmeg, I love ginger in fragrances, not the refreshing ginger. I love more that like powdery ginger, the kind of ginger that you have in Noir Parfum by Tom Ford. Love that ginger spicy feel there. But yeah, basically I love more sweet spices. Now when it comes to green spices, I have to be very honest, sometimes I'm struggling a bit with them. And this fragrance has lots of green spices. Now, this is for those who are not afraid to shine. Like when you wear this fragrance, like you don't have to be confident, like you have to be ultra confident to pull off this fragrance. It's elegant, it's a statement fragrance, it's a fragrance with a presence to it itself in a sense, you know, you cannot go unnoticed when you wear this fragrance. So it's a scent DNA that either you wear it, or that if you don't know how to wear it, I feel like it can wear you. You know, it's that kind of fragrance. It's quite polarizing. So yeah, this is not a fragrance for everybody. This is definitely not the kind of fragrance that you blind buy. To me, this is like borderline wearable, creative, artistic, unique, challenging. You know, it has a bit of everything. So depending on what you are used to in general or what you are not used to in general, you might struggle a bit with this fragrance. Now, this one I will actually spray it on paper because it's very strong. And I already have 2 fragrances sprayed on my skin. Now, this fragrance, basically, it's supposed to be a spicy, rosy fragrance. I think it has listed Laotian oud from Laos. I don't know how to say Laotian oud. Oud from Laos. It has listed rose. It has listed... here are the notes. I don't remember. I looked the notes up after I tried them, because I don't like to look the notes up before I try a fragrance, because I feel like then my brain might interfere, you know, because you saw that note and then you smell it. But I like to test fragrances without looking at the notes, and then I like to look the notes up, you know, to see like if they match or not. Now, this fragrance, I think 1 spray is enough. Look, for this fragrance, less is definitely more. Now, this is not a sweet oud. This is not like a sweet oud that you can easily wear it, like Oud Satin Mood from MFK, or like Shagaf Oud or Oud Bouquet from Lancôme, that scent family. This is for those who love spices, but spices like with the volume all the way up. You have a blast of spices in the opening. But again, remember what I said, not all spices smell the same in fragrances. Now, the spices that I detect here are these nose-tingling, green, herbal, aromatic kind of spices with some herbs there in the background as well. Very strong, very projecting, very nose-tingling, you know, it has that like nose-tingling type of smell. Not smell, effect, sorry, type of effect. It's loud, it's bold. This to me, this is an opulent fragrance. This is definitely an opulent fragrance. Honestly, when I smell this fragrance, you know who came in my mind? If you have watched Dubai Bling, then you know Ibrahim. Yeah, to me, this is something that he would wear, because he has this like very, how to say, like, first of all, he's very confident within himself. He's not afraid to be in the center of attention. You know, he dresses very elegant. He loves this like kind of statement pieces in a sense, you know, he's not afraid to go all out. And this, I don't know why, but when I smelled this fragrance, he came in my mind. Like, it's definitely something that he would wear. Yeah, so basically you have these spices that are very prominent, and then you have the rose accord in the background with a slight oud here. Now, the oud here, it's not skanky. The problem, or like the challenging facet of the fragrance, is not the skanky oud. The oud here is not skanky. The oud here adds this like richness and woodiness to the fragrance, but it's not skanky at all. To me, it's not the animalic, fecal-like oud. To me, the challenging aspect of the fragrance, and that this is why I say that it's for people with a very particular taste, is the spicy greenness of the fragrance. You need to love spicy fragrances and green fragrances. Or like spicy, nose-tingling, green, slightly herbal, aromatic type of sensation. You know, you really need to appreciate this kind of fragrances to fully appreciate this fragrance. You also have, it smells very beautiful. It's not, look, I'm not, how to say, like, I don't feel 100% confident wearing this fragrance, even though I love this kind of fragrances. But like I've mentioned, to me the challenging aspect is the greenness. I don't really resonate with green fragrances, but I love the way they played here with the cumin. The cumin, how to say, it smells carnal in a way. It smells like a little bit of sweaty skin, even though that might sound very off-putting, but you know, that like natural skin, like slightly sweaty facet, you know, or like smell that let's just say like you were doing sports maybe, I don't know, or like it's very warm and your skin warms up and you have this slight scent, but nothing too off-putting, you know. You have this aspect as well here, so it has something carnal about it, with that greenness, with that spiciness that tingles your nose. However, the tingling, like the nose tingling aspect of the fragrance, I feel like it tones down, let's just say 10 minutes in, you know, so don't be afraid of that. But the greenness stays, keep in mind. Now, let me talk a bit about the Rose Accord. This is a very complex fragrance. You have a lot of different nuances and facets to me that make it stretch in all these different directions. So, you know, like when you smell it, you are hit with all these notes and accords, not in an unpleasant way, but you need to have the taste and the nose and the stomach for these heavy fragrances. This is heavy, this is loud, this is the kind of like unapologetic fragrances, like I'm here and I don't care what you think of me, you know, like I'ma be me and I'ma shine in my own way, you know. This is the feel that this fragrance gives me. Now, about the Rose Accord. The Rose Accord, in the opening, you don't get it as much. And as you start to get it, because of the spices, the greenness of the fragrance, you have this like rose mixed with green sensation. The rose itself, it's quite sweet, but it's like a floral take on a Rose Accord. It's not a gourmand leaning Rose Accord. It's not a spicy leaning Rose Accord in a way. It's a Rose Accord that's quite floral, so it's very like breezy in a sense, yet strong. To me it smells like a red rose, but you also have something from the stem of the rose, you know, because you do get the greenness. It's almost like you have a rose mixed with geranium sensation. But as this starts to develop on the skin, I feel like the rose does actually indeed get denser, it gets sweeter, accompanied with that cumin, you know, with that like warm, slightly sweaty skin feel. With the oud, now the oud here to my nose translates more to a woody leathery facet. It's not the kind of oud that's, it's nothing like Hindi oud, you know, it's nothing like Hindi oud. It's not that like pungent, animalic, acidic, sour, pissy kind of oud, you know. It's a woody leathery oud, so I'm guessing it's an oud accord they used here. But yeah, quite leathery as well. And keep in mind the greenness. Definitely keep in mind the greenness. Now this fragrance, you need to test it. And when I say test it, I don't mean just like you smell it once and that's it. Like if you are, let's just say you are curious about this fragrance, and who I think would enjoy this fragrance, if you enjoy fragrances that are loud, that are slightly obnoxious, but a good kind of obnoxious, and if you keep in mind, you need to appreciate greener facets in fragrances, green, herbal, and slightly aromatic, and the like nose tingling spices, you know. You need to appreciate this kind of facets in fragrances to fully appreciate this one and to rock it and to feel confident. Now, even though I love leather, I love oud, I love rose, basically. I am struggling a bit with the greenness here, but I have actually layered this one with Muatar Tahab from Junaid, and I love the combo, but I do have to test it more to see. I do have to experiment with some layering options, because, by the way, if you have tried this fragrance, let me know what you think of it. But something that I really like, look, I can't say that I'm the biggest fan of cumin, because you know cumin can be a very, even when you cook something with cumin, it's a very overpowering scent profile, you know. It fills the room even when you cook. Like when you put cumin in something, you will taste it, you will smell it, you know. It has this very strong flavored aroma to it, and I feel like that aroma transfers into the fragrance as well. But to me it doesn't smell like, I mean, but actually yes, it does, like up to a point it does smell like, I have to check the mic to see if it's there. Yeah, all good. I feel like up to a certain point it moves, once it started to lose the that like nose tingling aspect, it does move into this like cooking spicy territory. But this is something that I like about it, and again, to me this fragrance shines on the skin. Now I have tried this fragrance on my partner's skin and I have tried it on my skin as well. To me, or like on me, I feel like the greenness overpowers a little bit, let's just say in the first 20 minutes, the composition. But on my partner's skin, that like sweaty cumin vibe, that like very carnal facet shines more. So yeah, if you are interested in this one, again, get a discovery set and try it for yourself. But keep in mind, this is not an oud fragrance or like a fragrance that I would advise for beginners. This is not a fragrance that I would advise, let's just say maybe you are looking for something day-to-day to wear. I don't think this is the day-to-day fragrance. Like, and look, I love heavy fragrances, I love loud fragrances, I love Black Orchid, I love Mask Mysterio, I love lots of oud, you know. I love a lot of fragrances that people would consider more challenging, a bit more obnoxious and loud. But this, I feel like, takes it to a whole different level in a sense. Or maybe I feel this because I'm not used to the greenness, I don't know. Let's move on to, okay, let's move on to Orchidee Rouge, because this is another one of the most popular fragrances, I feel like. And up to this point, we've talked about some pretty heavy fragrances, so it's good to move on to something lighter. Even though, don't do what I did. Basically, when you are testing a fragrance or when you are like talking about fragrances on your own, it's good to start out with the lighter ones. Start with the lighter ones, then move on to the heavier ones. Because if you, especially if you, let's just say, you're not really, or like, if your nose gets tired very fast, until you will get to the lighter ones, like if you start with the really heavy ones, you will not be able to smell the lighter ones, you know. Okay, this one I will spray it on paper actually. Let's see. This is the kind of fragrance that, to me, the way it smells in the opening and the way it smells in the dry down, they're like two completely different fragrances. It's a fragrance that takes you on such a beautiful scent journey in a sense. To me, it's a fragrance that, how to say, like, you know, like when you want to test a fragrance and maybe you want to rush through testing it in a sense, you know, because you want to have like a grip or like a grasp of the fragrance. Yeah, you cannot do this with this fragrance. You actually need to invest the time if you're testing this fragrance, because it keeps changing it and changing it. And how it smelled, let's just say 20 minutes ago, it's not the way it will smell like in 20 minutes from now, you know what I mean? And it changes and different notes keep coming up and like moving in the background. It's very interesting. Now, first of all, this fragrance, it's a fragrance that's modern. It has something molecular about it in a sense, and it's quite minimalistic. It's a fragrance that smells sophisticated yet quite simplistic in a sense. It's not overly complicated. Also, like in terms of the texture of the fragrance and in terms of this, like it's very like light, bright, not breezy, but it has some airiness throughout it. But to me, what's very interesting is that when you smell it, especially on skin, on paper now I don't detect that aspect, but when you smell it on skin and when you smell it from further away, you get a type of scent, and when you smell it from closer, like when you go in and you smell it closer, you get a different facet of the fragrance. Now, to me, this smells the best in the air or after, let's just say 15 minutes as it starts to develop on the skin. But in the opening, this smells sweet. It smells, look, I think this will sound very weird, but how to explain? It's like, it's a complex fragrance when you actually are able to smell all its nuances and all its facets, but it seems like a simplistic fragrance. You know what I mean? It's almost like you have all these notes and accords that are wrapped, that are enveloped basically by something that smells sweet, round and transparent, and you get all the other notes and the facets through that coating of something sweet, round and transparent. I don't know if it makes any sense, but it's a fragrance that's quite closed off in a way, especially in the opening. But it's sweet. It's definitely sweet. I do detect something slightly medicinal, but again, behind that like sweet coating, you know. It's a fragrance that to me, in a way, gives me this like old money vibe. In the opening, it smells like honeyed florals, like something that's like yellow floral but sweet, with something that's like a little bit aromatic, not aromatic, more like medicinal in the background, but like hidden very well behind all the other nuances. with something slightly powdery. And imagine you have all of these and you wrap them in something that's like translucent, transparent, sweet and round, you know? So you get all these smells from that lens, or like within that lens, you know? I hope I'm making sense. This fragrance was a complete surprise, because just when I started to detect like these nuances and I started to make up my mind as to what I was smelling, because I was struggling, like when I was testing this fragrance, of course I'll write my first impressions on fragrances, you know, like I write, when I'm testing a fragrance, I write what I smell, how it makes me feel, like the energy of the fragrance and everything. But when I was testing this fragrance and I was like with the pen in my hand, like smelling this fragrance, I had a hard time writing, like finding my words, because it's something so unusual in a way, but also quite cozy, quite sophisticated, yet quite easy to enjoy at the same time. I don't know. Now yeah, how this one actually smells like, let's just say after it starts to open up a bit more, to me smells like you have this creamy yellow floral feel with something that smells powdery and orangey. You start to get this like creamy lactonic facet of the fragrance with some like almondy vibes in the background, and with that like sweet, round and translucent coating that I was telling you about. Definitely opens up much more. You start to get all these different nuances that it's almost like where were they up till until this point? I'm telling you, this fragrance, like if you, let's just say, if you are looking for a fragrance that that maybe will shock your senses in a way, but in a very pleasant way, you know, it's very smooth, it's very refined, it's very well blended, but also, how to say, it's almost like this fragrance has a lot happening behind closed doors, but you only get to smell hints of it, you know, in a sense. This is the exact vibe that it gives me. When it gets to, let's just say, a stable point, as it gets closer to the dry down, this one smells like, to me, you have this like powdery orangey smell mixed with this beautiful creamy yellow floral accord, mixed with this creamy milky lactonic facet and a slight sweet almondy vibe, with that sugary round translucent coating that I was telling you. Very beautiful, very feminine, very delicate. It smells very refined, it smells quite unique. Personally, I haven't tried anything else that smells like this fragrance. This is definitely a DNA that, for me at least, is very unique. By the way, if you have tried this fragrance, let me know, how does this fragrance smell like to you? I feel like for everyone this fragrance will have a different meaning, different notes will shine more, you know. It's the kind of fragrance that I have a feeling that everyone will get different nuances out from. Because when I smell this fragrance and I have written all my thoughts and I have looked up the notes, to me I was like a little bit shocked in a sense, because like when you look strictly at the notes of this fragrance, it doesn't really like fully capture how this fragrance smells like, you know. But yeah, it's a good thing they again have samples so you can test the fragrance for yourself. And something else, when I was wearing this fragrance, I think after that, what was I doing? Either I was cleaning a bit or cooking something, but basically I was like moving a lot and I kept getting whiffs of this fragrance for a good few hours. So I have a feeling that even though this is more of delicate, refined, this actually performs very well. Now yeah, let's move on to the other fragrances. Okay, so let's move on to, okay, let me see, which one should I choose? Let's move on to this one. Let's move on to, okay, I don't know how to read it. Broceliande, I don't know how to read it. I don't know. But basically this one. Okay. I will spray again this one on paper. Yeah, I remember this fragrance now. Look, this smells like, in the opening, imagine you cut like few slices of lemon, you dip them in sugar, you cut few slices of bergamot, you dip them in sugar. So you have this very pronounced, rich, citrusy, slightly refreshing, slightly sparkling effect here, but sweet at the same time. But the kind of sweetness that comes when you dip lemon in sugar, you know, and then you eat it, you know. So it has this like sensation in a way, but it's also citrusy, it's also sweet. with something slightly minty and herbal in the background, and with a beautiful caramel facet here. Now I feel like as this one starts to develop on the skin, that like refreshing and slightly bitter even facet of the citruses that you had in the opening definitely toned down, and you get more of the citrusiness and the sweetness, you know, like remember those like lemon slices dipped in sugar, you know, that's the exact sensation, with something that's quite cold and refreshing, something like ginger, you know, that like energizing, with something that's almost like a little bit minty, and with this rich, warm and very dense and sweet caramel facet that acts like the base in this fragrance. Basically you have the caramel, and then on top of those you have the citruses, the ginger and the sweetness. It has something that makes me think of a gourmand fragrance when I smell this fragrance, but not like a smart gourmand. It doesn't fully go into that like sickly, sweet, gourmand, edible field. It has something that makes it wearable during the very high heat of the summer, let's say, you know, without it being too much. It's a unisex fragrance. I feel like men could easily pull this fragrance if they are into sweet fragrances. If you're not into sweet fragrances, then I don't think you will enjoy this fragrance that much as a man. But if you're into sweet fragrances, yeah, why not? It smells delicious, with a hint of something that's refreshing, with a hint of something that's quite green in the background. And basically as the fragrance starts to develop, I feel like that refreshing, effervescent aspect that you had in the opening starts to tone down. The bitterness, I mean not the bitterness, you didn't have a lot of bitterness, but you had just like a slight green bitter facet, again tones down. The lemon loses the citrusiness, you know, and it gets much sweeter. Also the caramel gets even more dense and warm and round and rich, and you start to have this like slightly aromatic facet in the background. I don't know, it's slightly like lemony, slightly aromatic, but you also have the sweet lemon. Yeah, it's a beautiful fragrance, definitely something. Yes, it's beautiful. Again, it smells very refined. This is something that I've noticed with a lot of these fragrances. None have that alcoholic blast in the opening, none have that like sharpness to them. The only fragrance that has a sharpness, but it has a sharpness because it comes from the spices that they use there, it's camel wood. But besides that, all are very smooth, all are very round, you know, they all smell very refined. Yeah, legit smells like you dip lemon without the citrusiness in sugar. You have some warm caramel, like warm sweet caramel somewhere, and a little bit of greenness there as well. Yeah, very interesting fragrance. Now let's move on to Gladiator. Now this is marketed towards men. And again, I cannot spray this fragrance, so I will see what I will do about that. Now, actually Gladiator, I will apply it on my skin because it's easier this way. Let's see. Here I have Vanuatu, and I just smelled it again. Oh, it smells so beautiful. Yeah, amazing fragrance, wow. Where should I apply it? Yeah, I will apply it here. Let's see. Yeah, again, this fragrance, look, I had the shock of my life when I smelled this fragrance. I have tested it on my skin, and then I looked at the notes. Like when you look at the notes, you're imagining something. I even remember it looked yellow and blue, so you're imagining something aquatic and something sweet, like pineapple sweet, you know, because this is the image that I have. Yellow blue accords, yellow blue notes, something like this. To me, this is completely different. To me, this is all about a gorgeous, like beautiful mentholated sensation it's so minty that it almost feels like you're crushing mint petals, not petals, but like you're crushing wild mint, or like you're picking wild mint with your bare hands, and you have that like scent trail, and you have that scent left of mint on your fingers, and you have this gorgeous cooling sensation, refreshing sensation, cold sensation, minty facet as well. To me, this is a salty, marine, aquatic type of fragrance. It has this blue facet as well, but it's not a sweet blue, freshy type of fragrance. Definitely doesn't follow the DNA. To me, this is cold, this is cooling, this is mentholated. It's quite arctic, you know, like that, like Do you know those shower gels that when you smell them, they're so mentholated that it's almost like you have a breeze of cold air, you know, like going in your face when you smell them? This fragrance has that exact sensation. To me, this is pure, cold, cooling, refreshing, Arctic type of fragrance. Quite salty, quite marine at the same time, but beautiful. It smells like you're somewhere in the north, so it's very cold. Like, I imagine, I don't know, like in the Baltic Sea or like in somewhere in the Scandinavian peninsula, you know, and like you have this like man that just like comes out from the sea, you know, but outside it's very cold, like the wind is blowing, it's chilly, it's quite cold and refreshing, you know, and he just comes out of the sea, you know, like this hairy man with like long hair. I don't know, this is the feeling that this fragrance gives me. But it's beautiful, very beautiful. See, now I start to detect some sweet facets, but the slightest, softest pineapple feel, because it's almost like the mentholated sensation toned down a little bit, so I can get to smell the sweetness behind it in a way, but very salty, very marine, very cooling, Arctic, you know, like legit, it smells Arctic. It smells like a breeze of cold air, like freezing, you know. It has this, I don't know, like something on ice type of sensation, you know. It's quite fresh, it's quite breezy, it's quite bright, but it has a presence to it. I feel like because of this like really pronounced cooling, refreshing facade, this fragrance stands out in a way from your typical blue freshies. But yeah, again, test it for yourself. I do like this fragrance, but if I were to say which one is my favorite between this one and Vanuatu for sure, much more unique. Also, this one to me is that like warm weather, summery fragrance, while Vanuatu to me is that like statement, like expensive smelling fragrance, refined fragrance, you know, like, yeah, it's just something else, I don't know. But this one is beautiful as well. It does get a tad fruitier as it starts to develop on my skin, but don't expect something very sweet, very fruity, because it's not. Definitely, again, has this masculinity to it in a sense. It smells very masculine, like a very manly man, you know, like that, I don't know, like when you think of a manly man, the epitome of a manly man, you know, but this manly man is less elegant in a sense, less, how to say, like, he's not paying as much attention to what he wears in a sense, not that he's, how to say, basically this one, Vanuatu, it's more refined, it's more luxurious, it's a man, I don't know, I'm imagining like a rich daddy, honestly, or something like this when I smell it, you know, whereas with this one, this is more casual, more sporty, more easy to enjoy, more, you know, like daytime appropriate, more appropriate to all occasions, basically. It's masculine, but I can see that it's very elegant, it's more sporty, it's more casual, whereas this one, Vanuatu, this is definitely much more elegant. This is for someone who is looking for a signature fragrance, that's a statement fragrance that smells refined. That person has, again, that person is definitely more elegant dressed, you know. Yeah, let's move on to the last fragrance for today's video. This is again, Gresk. I don't know how to pronounce it. This fragrance, look, this fragrance, when I smelled it for the first time, it made me remember, like in one of my hiking trips, I ended up picking wild mint. Yeah, basically I ended up picking wild mint to make tea after, like from nature, you know. And let me actually spray it and I will tell you how it smells. Again, this is an ode to mint, in my opinion. This is so minty that it almost feels like it unclogs your nose, you know, that minty. But the mint, how to say, it's not that like mint on ice sensation, you know, that like cocktail, like mojito type of fragrance. To me smells like, okay, so I had to take a short break, but I'm back, you guys. I was talking about the last fragrance from Sora Dora that I have tested called Gresk. Now, this fragrance to me smells just like wild mint, but like the whole plant, you know, like if you've ever been in nature and if you have ever picked wild mint with your bare hands, do you know that after smell that's left on your skin, that it's kind of minty but at the same time quite green and herbal? This fragrance smells just like that. I feel like in the opening it's definitely much more minty, to the point of being almost like mentholated in a sense, but as it starts to develop on the skin, the mintiness tones down to a very natural like minty undertone in fragrances. It legit smells like you just picked wild mint or mint with your bare hand, like you picked lots of it, and then you smell your hand, you know, so you have this like minty facet, but you also have this like green herbal like sensation or smell, you know, but the kind of green herbal facet that comes from the mint plant, you know, it's quite bright, it's quite green, quite fresh, but not a shower gel freshness, more like a minty freshness in a way. It also has this like tea-like quality, you know. But what I was very surprised to notice is that after the opening, where I told you the mint is very strong, almost like mentholated, cooling like type of mintiness, then it gets more subdued, you know. So you get to a point where it's like minty with something slightly herbal in the background, green and fresh. Then out of nowhere you start to get this sweetness, this like caramel-like sweetness that gets more and more pronounced until you get, I feel like, to the dry down, where you have this like two contrasting facets or like two very different scent profiles mixed together. On one hand you have this like green tea-like minty, slightly herbal feel from the mint here, mixed with this warm, round and dense caramel. And these two nuances are quite contrasting, especially when you put them together. It's almost like they emphasize each other in a sense. Again, it's a fragrance. Look, I don't know if it's something that I would personally wear, but very beautiful fragrance if you're a mint lover. Now the closest one I can think of that has some slight resemblances to this one is Atiabel Marchud 4 White, but when I smell them side by side they are still different. This one is slightly more herbal, that one is more like minty, mint on ice type of feel with a slight cardamom greenness, that like green cardamom spicy facet with something incense like in the background lost somewhere. This one goes into a bit of a different direction, but again, if you have tried Atiabel Marchud 4 White and you love that fragrance, this is something I think you might enjoy as well. Even though, like I told you, they're a bit different, but I feel like first you have the mint, but it's a very realistic interpretation of mint. I love mint tea, I love to pick mint, even when I was a kid and I used to go like to the mountains with my parents in like holidays or anything, like I remember my mom used to always pick wild mint. She would bring it home, she would like lay it to dry, you know, and then she would make us all throughout winter like mint tea. Yeah, very beautiful and very realistic smelling. Okay, so these were the fragrances, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have you heard of Sora Dora fragrances? Have you tried any fragrances from Sora Dora? I would love to hear your feedback down below. Now, from all these fragrances that I have tried, I can definitely say that I can sense the quality here, you guys. They are smooth, they are refined, they don't have anything sharp, you know, they don't have that like blast of alcohol in the opening, nothing scratchy, besides camel oud again, but camel oud I feel like it's scratchy in a sense on purpose, you know, because you have that very concentrated nose tingling herbal sensation, spicy herbal sensation, you know. I feel like they have a little bit of everything. Now, if you are wondering what are my favorite ones from all the ones that I have tried, look, the one that surprised me the most is Vanuatu for men. Yeah, I love that fragrance. I think it smells freaking sexy on a man. I think it's a fragrance that, I don't know, it's a fragrance that if you're a man, I will just leave it like this. If you're a man and you have the possibility to buy a sample of this one, try it. I don't think you will be disappointed. The one that matches me the most, I feel like it's Mandorle. I was expecting camel oud to be the one, but to me it's a tad bit more green than my tolerance. Now keep in mind, I'm not really, like, how to say, I don't resonate a lot with a lot of green notes in fragrances. Look, besides mint, I mean like green, herbal, aromatic spices. They're not my cup of tea necessarily, but I love, after the opening, I really enjoy how it smells in the heart, in the dry down. It's beautiful, but again, not a safe blend by, like, not at all. And it's quite challenging. I have tried a lot of challenging fragrances, but I feel like this one, like I've mentioned, is challenging because of the scent, like that, like herbal aromatic sensation that I was telling you about. Now, another one that surprised me was Orchidee Rouge, because it seems so simplistic, but when you actually get to test it, you realize it's quite complex in a way. But yeah, overall, I feel like I had a great experience with all these fragrances. Again, thank you so much to Sora Dora for giving me the opportunity to test your fragrances. I had a great time testing your fragrances and exploring the brand. Like I've mentioned, you guys, I think they provided my channel a discount code. If they did, I will leave it here on the screen and down below. Feel free to use it, feel free not to use it, it's up to you, of course, always. Yeah, if you want to say me, if you want to tell me anything, please put it down in the comment section, and I promise that I will get back to you. I think I'm starting to lose my voice because I've been talking for like an hour. I will just end the video here. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, I would love to like the video because it would help me a lot with the algorithm. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. But I will see you in my next video. But until then, thank you so much for watching, you guys, and I want to wish you an amazing day wherever you are. Bye.